Richard Rodgers with a walk-off touchdown. Total disbelief at Ford Field.
He may go all the way to the 20 down the right side. And it's Randall Cobb to the 5, to the end zone, to the touchdown. Oh, my goodness.
Welcome, everybody, to the Green and Golden Boys Packers podcast, the podcast for Packer fans wondering, what did Aaron Rodgers see on the Jumbotron the other day? I am your co-host, Charles, and with me, as always, is Marcus. Marcus, how are you?
Doing well, Charles, yourself?
I'm doing great. What did Aaron Rodgers see on the Jumbotron to give away something? I'm assuming you saw the after-game interview. What did he see to have him single-handedly win the game, even though he wasn't on the field?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of the interviews after, like in the post game, were giving Rodgers a hard time because they were speculating that he was the one who's told the referee or told somebody in the booth that the Buccaneers were they were overtime. They got down to 0 and they needed to call that
on the play clock.
Penalty in the play clock. Thank you. But then I had been reading a couple of other articles that said that he actually saw on the Jumbotron a shot of Tom Brady's or an offensive player's tablet with the play open. Now, I don't know. I don't know if that's what happened or not, but that's what a couple people speculate. What do you think he saw?
I don't think it's the play clock because I don't think seeing it on the Jumbotron is gonna help you see that. Yeah, the Jumbotron. I don't think seeing that on the big screen is gonna help anyone because I mean there's clocks all around. Not all around, but they're in their specific spots, and I don't think you would take a camera angle to be able to see that. So it must have been a play or a lip syncing something, not the play clock. But I think it's interesting, and if he's not going to tell us why, and I think he might be telling Pat McAfee right now on his show as we tape this on a Tuesday. I wonder why he brought it up at all, because that poor guy might be out of job right now if it's true that he showed something and he just kind of coyly put it out there that he saw something that maybe they shouldn't have shown.
Yeah, and I don't know what good it does talking about it at all, honestly, because like you said, you're either trying to make the Buccaneers, video people look like idiots, or you're trying to take credit for something that, you didn't really need to take credit for. I don't really know what the play is there.
I don't want to judge Aaron too hard on it, but I thought it was unless we find out soon. I think that was kind of a pointless comment, but it is interesting if it is true. I mean, everyone says he's super smart and super observant and all that good stuff. So it'd be cool to find out what it was, and if he actually saw that, then hey, good job. We maybe potentially that was why we defended the 2-point conversion so well. Before we jump off of the topic, though, I do not believe that the touchdown play was a delay of game. I think it was a legal snap, and I know a lot of Packer fans don't agree with me. But I think they got that off in time, and I think that obviously the 2-point conversion did not get off in time. Do you agree or disagree with me?
At the moment, I would have disagreed with you, but after the rule being explained to me, I would agree. The second one was a blatant clock mismanagement, by the Buccaneers.
Is hilarious.
And the first one, especially when it was on consecutive plays, but the first one by a rule, it needs to give the referee time to look from 0, because he's watching the clock. It hits 0, then he looks at the play. If the ball is snapped in between the time that the referee sees 0 on the clock and looks to see if the ball is snapped, and it is snapped, by definition, that's not a delay of game. So I learned something new. I didn't realize it. I always assumed if it hit 0 and the ball wasn't snapped, then it's a delay of game. So
exactly, and so I think you described it 100% accurately, and the way that any NFL pundit or rule maker would describe it at. And another point I think is that it's only showing you one digit, right? Like I always I'm okay with the referee looking down and then, at the clock down and then back up or whatever, because in my mind, if it hits 0, you still have a fraction of a second left. So I like kind of that beat after hit 0 because if you show 3 more digits, if you will, on that second clock, you might have a quarter of a second left by the time that snap gets off. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, before it would have in theory hit like -1 or something like that, or
before it hits triple zeros, right?
Sure,
There might be a half second. So I think part of the problem could be solved if you actually add 2 more digits onto the second, right? And people would be a little bit less. It would look less fishy because it's on 0 for a second. Which I think is fair. But anyway, I'm glad we agree on that. Kind of last part of this is, doesn't it just blow your mind that they didn't have a 2-point play, or at least 3 2-point plays ready to say, okay, depending on what the Packers come out in defense, how they look, this is what we're going to go with. And maybe that's part of the reason. Maybe that's part of what Aaron Rodgers tipped off to our defense because he saw something, and that's what delayed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers so long, because we played the play they're going for perfectly.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely could be a possibility. I mean, the personnel I think was also an issue. I mean they had obviously had a lot of guys hurt that game, so I'm guessing that had something to do with it as well. Guys were just in the wrong place because they didn't know what was going on. But I could be wrong. It could have been as simple as they just only they didn't have anything ready to go, or they didn't have more than one play ready to go.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, great end of the game. Obviously, we skipped right to the end there by using the intro I used. But I mean, tell me what you saw. I mean, we started off very hot offensively, and then quickly cooled after an Aaron Jones fumble. What are a couple 2 good things and 2 bad things that you saw in Sunday's win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Yeah. I'm going to go with good was special teams, surprisingly. I think that's been kind of our Achilles heel these last several years. But Pat O'Donnell with 5 punts inside the 10 set of Packers, or I think tied a Packers record, which was great to see. And then, Keyshawn Nixon coming in for Jair Alexander, being able to, or was it Rudy Ford who came in and downed it right at the 1 yard line? I want to say it's Nixon. Was it Nixon?
It was Nixon. Okay. Yep.
So that I think that would be my good right away is there were a couple plays on special teams that really gave us an advantage in this game. It wasn't a wash. It was, I think our special teams played really well, which is awesome to see. And I hope it's a trend that continues going forward.
100% agree with you. And the one bad thing that the special teams, they did 1.5 things bad. The one bad thing was the penalty. That was not a penalty.
Not a penalty.
I don't even know why they even had to discuss that. Whoever was our, Greg Olson and who's Greg's partner now. They brought in the rule specialist. Yeah, and it's like, come on. Obviously, he's being tackled into that, and that was a huge swing in field position. So that was terrible. And then the only other kind of bad thing after that play, Amari Rodgers got knocked pretty hard, and he. On the next punt, I think it was not that following punt after the penalty, but the following possession, he took a fair catch when he had 20 yards of space between him and the next guy. Now, you and I think we'll take a fair catch all the time without fumbling the ball. But as we kind of improve on our special teams, you would like to see him get 5-10 yards up the field without calling fair catch so quickly. Do you know?
I know what you're saying. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm like, you know what? Great that you called a fair catch and you caught it and whatever. But yeah, I mean, when you have 20 yards between you and the nearest gunner, when are you going to return it if not in that situation? When you've got so much space in front of you. I would agree. That was probably the lone special teams error throughout the.
I'm being hypocritical though, because I've said on this podcast that just fair catch it every single freaking time and let Aaron Rodgers take the ball. So I am being a little hypocritical when I say that, but it's it was kind of glaring there.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that situation, I think you're under the impression that that those situations are all going to be you've got a gunner within 5 yards of you. I think it's safe to say that if the guy is 20, 25 yards away and you fair catch it. With a quarter of the field in front of you, then our expectations can change a little bit.
Yeah, awesome. What were some bad things you saw on the game? I don't want to talk too much about the refereeing, but I felt like the play, there were a lot of penalties on the Packers, and I think they called a lot that shouldn't have been called. I think the Buccaneers got away with tons of holds on the offensive line. I mean,
the Packers were generating a lot of pressure, and there were a couple snapshots if you look back at the game, and I think there's one where Rashawn Gary is getting held by two guys, and he either still got the sack, or it just wasn't called. And I don't want to talk too much about it. It just seemed from the eye test that the refs were letting the Bucks play and not really letting the Packers play, especially with some of those some of those dumb calls like the blocking into the kicker, and then Alan Lazard had I think it was a block in the back. Or something at some point. That was just, obviously not what happened, but so that's all I'm going to say about that. I think the worst thing I saw in this game was Jair Alexander getting knocked out of the game with a hamstring injury, a groin injury.
I think hamstring.
Was it hamstring?
Is it groin?
I think
that's
what
they said. That they said hamstring in the game. I don't know if they've updated the website. I have not seen that, but. Either way,
could
not
be wrong.
Great.
No, I'm looking at it right now. Packers news. It's a groin injury. The good news is it's not a serious injury, but he missed 3/4 of the game almost. The nice thing though is Keyshawn Nixon came in and played fine. He played okay. He had some big plays on special teams, but he had some decent plays. Are
you ready to
on
say
defense as well?
Are you ready to say Nixon is our 2022 Rasul Douglas?
No.
But
Rasul Douglas is still Rasul Douglas, but if
a guy who wasn't really wanted and then kind of got a spot and then turned into something, I don't know. It could happen.
Yeah, it could. Really quick, and this isn't really a good or a bad thing, but they were after the Alan Lazard touchdown, he came off the field and just barfed all over the sideline. Did you see that in real time?
I did not see it in real time, but I did hear about it later.
I did, and I'm like, wait a minute, did he just take a big gulp of orange Gatorade and then spit it out? And then I rewound it and I watched it again, and I'm like, no, he just came off the field and threw up. So the heat seemed to be an issue a little bit for these Packers players. It was 90 degrees at kickoff and 60% humidity, which is bordering on tropical humidity. So,
and then they're being told to chug water, chug Gatorade, chug whatever. So I can see how that could happen. But tough.
Anyway, what about you? Good and bad?
Good. First three, yes, I'm saying three, but first three possessions of the game. Obviously, the one of the bad is going to be the way that ended. The third possession ended with the fumble on the 1 yard line from one of our go-to guys. Aaron Jones can't be fumbling the ball on the 1 yard line. But 21 points. I mean, Aaron Rodgers said it in the interview at the end of the game. They thought 21 points would win this game, and they almost got there in the first three possessions. And I was kind of starting to, as we're doing this podcast, I kind of start thinking of my, points, I guess, during the game. And as it looked like we were going to score that third possession, I knew offensively Tampa Bay was handicapped. But defensively, to our point in the preview episode, you actually kind of thought more highly of them, and so did the stats. I kind of thought they weren't playing as good of teams, but we moved the ball so well on these guys, those first three possessions that it looked very promising, right? I mean, one of the top defenses in the league, and we moved it well on them. The bad part about that is it so much reminded me. So this is my bad of the game. It's the same, almost the same thing, but it so much reminded me. It was almost a mirror image of our loss to the 49ers last year. A hot 2 possessions and then nothing. And I would argue the only difference between the playoff loss last year against the 49ers and this Sunday's win against the Buccaneers, besides the snow, that the only difference was a blocked punt. Our special teams didn't screw up. Otherwise, it was eerily similar to that game last year. Am I crazy? Am I putting too much thought into that? Or is there something to us?
I think you're right there. I mean, the 49ers came back at the end of the game. Buccaneers came back at the end of the game. They were walking all over our defense. All of a sudden they could, they move the ball at will. Our defense is playing soft, and just kind of deviated from their entire game plan. They were executing